David Davis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm going to be very brief and speak simply to new clause 1 and new clause 2 in the name of the Right Honourable Member for Hodge Hill, my name and a number of other long-standing defenders of justice in Britain. And what they do is they effectively make slaps near impossible when protecting economic crime, when they're used to protect economic crime. Far too narrow, by the way, but that's what this bill demands. And I'll leave it to the right honourable gentleman to explain the mechanism. I just want to talk for a couple of minutes about how important this is and how we got to where we are today. Because it dates back to about 2000, I guess, maybe a bit earlier, when London had become liberalised and the Putin oligarchs and others, Chinese people as well and others, were looking to places to hide their ill-gotten gains and their ill-gotten behaviour. And London was a wonderful target for that. Vast flows of money in which they could hide the billions that they were stealing from the Russian people and others. And at the time, also, it has to be said, pretty slapdash corporate admin. We were talking about that yesterday, and with respect to Companies Act, the Companies House and so on. And I'll say this quite brutally, I'm afraid, the complete feebleness of the British establishment, by which I mean everybody. I mean both parties, I mean the agencies tasked with carrying out the control of this, the SFO, which I think bluntly has been a waste of space, the NCA, which has not been good enough, created for this but not been good enough. All those things are happening. And I'll say to the gentleman on the opposition front bench, it's wider than just the Conservative Party. It starts, actually, with Blair Brown, goes on to Cameron Osborne. All of them made mistakes. I mean, the golden visa he talked about was created in 2000, just as we were rushing into the collapse of Western financial capitalism. We created the golden visa under the previous government. We were too soft. Yes, of course. Of course.
He's making a very valid point, and I agree with him that the creation of the scheme was under the new Labour administration. But the point I made in my speech was that a number of these golden visas were given after the Russian invasion of Crimea in 2014. So I think the naivety and complacency, he's right, successive governments are guilty of that, but I think there's a point at 2014 where we really needed to see a different approach.
I mean, there's no doubt. The more recent you are, the more salient the case. Frankly, I can remember being ashamed at a British Prime Minister hosting Putin at the Olympics only a few years after Litvinenko was murdered in our country by the most cruel and overt act of state terrorism. And neither government again dealt with that. I mean, Cameron's action was grotesque in the extreme, but neither government dealt with it. Similarly, both governments kowtowed to China, after Tibet and all the rest of it. There are too many times when this has been done, and it's the entire system, not just one or other government. And of course, London is a fabulously attractive place. So if you're a Russian, indeed if you're Chinese, if you want to be somewhere else than Russia, this is the place to be. And again, we facilitated that every term. Now, within all of that comes the issue which SLAPS relates to. Because we also have a legal system which is amongst probably the most brilliant in the world in terms of delivering fair outcomes and good justice. It is brilliant. But it is also phenomenally expensive, which means it's one-sided in its operation when it comes into play between an oligarch and an ordinary citizen, journalist, or whatever they may be. And that, in conjunction with the things that flowed from it, the behaviour of solicitors, some of whom my honourable friend from the Isle of Wight's not here, but he gave them a fair old pasting yesterday, but one that was deserved, I'm afraid. The private investigators industry, unregulated, undertakes crimes in order to gather information to be used as weapons against other people, and our courts, not uniquely but outstandingly, allow that information to be used. in each individual case that might be the right decision, but the collective effect of it all is to suck criminally based information into our system and therefore engender and help the industry. All of these are why new clause 1 and 2 are vital, because what that all had the effect of doing was creating a vast, possibly unintentional, institutional cover-up for criminal activity. Money laundering, fraud, concealment of evil actions abroad, and bear in mind, the people we're talking about, these oligarchs, some of them are murderers. The system murders people. So it is really, really evil activity. So that's why this matters. That's why new clause 1 and 2 are incredibly important. Now, what we're proposing today, what the Right Honourable Gentleman is proposing today, is very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, a second best option. The best option we've already heard in earlier interventions is a freestanding bill. Immediately, because this is happening now. There are court cases going on as I stand here in which people are having their lives destroyed by the operation of slabs. The second best is to have it in the Bill of Rights, but the Bill of Rights we now know, for all sorts of reasons, is way down the timetable. We may not see it before the next election, in which case we've lost 2 more years on this. So what this amounts to is a way of dealing with this criminal activity or near criminal activity in a way which is not susceptible to a finely tuned piece of law here or there. I listened with fascination to my old friend on that. You know, getting that right's difficult. Getting this right is not difficult, because the greatest enemy of evil is a free press. And what we've allowed to happen in our country in the last couple of decades or so is our free press has become gagged and crippled. And if we can take that gag away, we can remove those bonds, then we will suddenly expose all the things we need to deal with. And those weaknesses I talked about before, the weaknesses of the SFO, the weaknesses of the NCA, we'll see them and we'll put them right, one by one. And that's why we should support this today.
Yeah.